What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And as always, we have ourselves a jam-packed show as we have a lot of volleyball to get into. As Ohio State, not to a whole lot of everyone's surprise, takes care of King in the opening round of the NCAA Men's Volleyball Tournament, as they will be taking on Penn State in the quarterfinals, and Long Beach State plays Grand Canyon in the quarterfinals in about less than 2 hours of this recording. Also, the NCAA Beach Volleyball bracket has been released as UCLA, LMU, and a bunch of other teams headline some of the top seeds. Also, we have the NVA happening this weekend as Event 2 will be taking place at Long Beach City College. Speaking of Long Beach City, they actually locked horns with Orange Coast in the CCCAA Men's Volleyball Final last Saturday. Did they come out on top, or did the Pirates go back-to-back? Hand me a volleyball. Set up the net, because I'm about to serve you up some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday morning, Tuesday wherever you are listening from. Either way, you have made your way into episode 192 of Set Point. Without any further delay, let us begin. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be where it's at without IE Sports Radio providing the platform to go live on Spreaker. Please do give IE Sports Radio a follow on Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok at IE Sports Radio. We also have a Facebook page for those that still use Facebook. All you just gotta do is type in the word IE, then sports, then radio in the search bar. Then you just see our logo, click on it, like us, and follow us, and that's how you're able to follow IE Sports Radio on Facebook. We also have a website, www.iesportsradio.com, and when you go there, you will see a Patreon link at the top, and if you choose to donate, donations will start out at $5 a month. This will get you a shout-out from all 26 of our shows, including this one, and higher tiers include IE Sports Radio merchandise, access to IESRU, the podcasting university of IE Sports Radio, and even a chance to be featured on a segment of our flagship show, The Defining Moment with Larry B. Because for the past 8 years and counting, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, such as Mark Pavlik and Alan Knipe, and other authorized media personnel, to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. All the while, we've been continuing to be by the fans and for the fans. So with your help, we are ready to take the next biggest step. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. Shout out to our Patreon supporters, Bay Area Raised Apparel, Marcus Losgreat, Key to the Gate, and a donor that wishes to remain anonymous. With all that said and done, let's begin with some NCAA men's volleyball. Also want to give a shout out to, for one quick second. Sorry. Still getting over some of these allergies. I am pretty much over this cold/allergies. Don't worry, I'm not going to get y'all sick if I come near you. So, just got to remember that. But I do want to give a shout out to IE Sports Radio and Larry B for pretty much allowing me to post the Alan Knipe and Mark Pavlik video interviews on the YouTube page. And thank you to everyone that checked out the videos. I really do appreciate it. It helps that I'm not filming at my job in like some random quiet place. I'm glad I was able to film at home early in the morning. Not quite early, but I was able to film early. And thank you to those that bared with me in terms of the whole Mark Pavlik. Also, I give a shout out to Mark Pavlik for bearing with me in terms of the technical difficulties in terms of the Zoom interview with him. But we were able to power through it, and we got in a good 30 minutes of interview time. So I definitely want to give a shout out to Alan Knipe and Mark Pavlik for taking time out of their day to letting me interview them via Zoom. And I hope you all enjoy. If you haven't checked it out, go to the IE Sports Radio YouTube page, and it's pretty much there from Thursday and Friday. But let's get on into some NCAA men's volleyball action. So the first round started on Sunday as King, the Conference Carolinas tournament champion, took on Ohio State, the MIVA Conference Tournament champion. So Ohio State, believe it or not, they were actually the lowest ranked team of the AVCA coaches poll, because you had UCLA and Hawaii, then you had Long Beach State as an at-large, then you had GCU, which was also an at-large, then you had Penn State, which was also an at-large, which was the EIVA Conference champion, and then you had the Conference of Carolinas champion King and Ohio State. So unfortunately for Ohio State, they were kind of the unfortunate one to basically get thrown into the first round. But they pretty much took care of business against King. They swept the Tornadoes. The first two sets, they didn't really have too many problems. King kind of hung in there in that first set, but the Buckeyes just took care of business as usual. Second set was kind of the same thing. They didn't really have too much trouble early on, and then after that, it was just smooth sailing for Bucky. Now, the third set, it was looking a little like last year's third set between Princeton and North Greenville. It wasn't the 40-38 set, but it was quite the Eventville set. There were 22 ties, 6 lead changes. Ohio State had to dodge multiple set points from King, but eventually the Buckeyes took that third set 36-34, completing the sweep over King and advancing to the quarterfinals of the NCAA Tournament, where they will play Penn State tonight. The Buckeyes were led by Jacob Pasteur, the MIVA and All-American first-teamer, and MIVA Player of the Year, as he had 16 kills. He hit .619, which was outstanding on 21 swings. Shane Wetzel had 11 kills. Jack Stevens, 7 kills. As a team, Ohio State hit .310. They didn't even start the match off hitting the ball all that well. They only had 8 kills, and they had 6 errors for a hitting percentage of 95. Even King out-hit them in that first set. But Ohio State also outdug King 33-25. They also outblocked King 9-6 as a team. Both teams actually combined for 1 service ace and actually went to the Buckeyes. Both teams combined for 29 service errors, which if you're not a fan of service errors, look away from that stat. But overall for the Buckeyes, it was just business as usual. They had won 11 in a row going into this match, so King had the tall task of trying to slow down the Buckeyes, and Ohio State was playing some darn good volleyball as of late. King was led by Warren Davis, who had 13 kills. Kellen Kennedy had 8 kills. AJ Drucker added 7 kills. As a team, King hit .232, which wasn't bad, but in the first 2 sets, they hit under 150, and they hit under 200 through the first 2 sets. Third set, they kind of got together. They hit .333, partially because it was an extended third set, but obviously they had those 22 kills, but it was incredible that they kind of got together. I thought they were going to force a fourth set, and part of me really wanted to see that, I wouldn't call them a small team, but it's the not-so-big-time team like Ohio State force a fourth set. So for King to pretty much nearly force a fourth set against Ohio State, the number 9 team in the AVCA coaches poll, it's quite incredible. Unfortunately for the Tornadoes, their season ends at 16-16, but they had an incredible year. They won their first ever Conference of Carolinas tournament. Ryan Booher has this program heading in the right direction, and hopefully for the Tornadoes' sake, they will put the Conference of Carolinas on the map. So unfortunately for King, that's the end of their season. The Buckeyes do advance to the quarterfinals, where they will play Penn State in a Big Ten versus Big Ten matchup. They will play after Long Beach State versus Grand Canyon, which should be quite the dandy. The Lopes and the Beach face each other at 2 p.m. Pacific time. As of this recording, it is 12:15 p.m. Pacific time, so that's basically an hour and 45 minutes away before first serve. And then I want to say the second matchup will be at like 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. I can't guarantee that, but it's pretty much going to be like almost following the previous matchup. It's not going to start early, but if in case it does happen to go 5 sets, which if that does happen, then bully for you, to all you 5 sets fans out there, then so be it. But for the time being, it is going to be Grand Canyon and Long Beach State facing each other at 2 p.m. And it is confirmed that Long Beach State and Penn State Penn State and Ohio State are facing one another at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. Barring the previous match doesn't get extended and it doesn't go the distance and it's not like a 2 hour and 40 minute-ish match. But I digress. So that's that for King and Ohio State. And that's actually a perfect segue to go into the rest of the NCAA tournament. So I kind of predicted Ohio State to beat King. If you did not hear last week's episode of Set Point, I kind of predicted that. Nothing against King, but Ohio State was playing some of its best volleyball, and they were on a roll. They were winners of 11 straight, now it's 12 straight. They got some momentum going into the match against Penn State, so it's sure to be quite the barn burner. But I'm going to make my prediction for the NCAA men's volleyball tournament throughout the rest of the way. All right, so Long Beach State versus Grand Canyon. The Beach versus the Lopes. The Beach lost in the semifinals of the Big West Conference tournament, though they did win, or they tied for first in the Big West Conference regular season championship. They take on a Grand Canyon team who's making its first ever NCAA tournament debut, which is incredible for them. For the Beach and the Lopes, they've only met one other time, and that was in 2019 when Long Beach State won that match. They also met in Las Vegas in fall season, but that's nothing really too all that important. It's just fall season. If you do great in fall season, great, but if you don't do great in fall season, that's no big deal. But now, this one is for a spot in the semifinals for the right to take on UCLA. You know, it's so tough to pick between the Beach and the Lopes. The Lopes have some good key pieces. They are definitely going to be ready for this moment, and this is something that Grand Canyon has been working for this entire season, and this is why they won their important matches, and they beat the teams in consideration, like Stanford, UC Irvine, BYU, the list goes on, and they even have wins over Ohio State, so before that whole 11-12 match game winning streak. But I have to go with Long Beach State for this one. I'm picking Long Beach State to beat Grand Canyon. I'm not going to try to predict the number of sets that Long Beach is going to win in, but I think Long Beach State is too deep for the Lopes. And honestly, Long Beach State just has the NCAA tournament experience, not just within its coaching staff, but within its players. You've got Mason Briggs, you've got Aiden Knight making his return trip, you've got Spencer Olivier, Clark Godbold, Shane Holdaway, Simon Torwey back from last year's team. Then you also throw Sotiris Chiapanis in the fold as well, coming from Ohio State. And even though they don't have Alex Nikolov, that most people were thinking Long Beach State was going to take a step back, Aiden Knight was kind of going to take a step back. No, it's kind of the opposite. Long Beach State is kind of having that second gear with Sotiris Chiapanis. So overall, for Long Beach State, I think they're just going to prove too much against the Lopes. I will eat my crow if GCU pulls off the upset, but for me, I think Long Beach State just has too much depth for Grand Canyon. Now, the other quarterfinal consists of Penn State versus Ohio State. And boy, this is going to be a very tough one because Ohio State is playing some of its best volleyball as of late. And then you've got Penn State, which returns a good portion of last year's team. And they've got a lot of maturity, and this is a team that does not want to see its season end. And man, I only wish this could be nationally televised. But for Penn State, Ohio State, I will say this. It's going to be a barn burner. These two split their regular season matchup. Penn State won at Covalli Center, while Ohio State won at Rec Hall when Penn State was the number one team in the nation. This is going to be a tough one to predict, and honestly, this is one of those matchups where you hate to see one team lose. But I don't know. It's just so tough to predict this matchup. I'm going to go with Penn State for this one. Again, I will eat my crow if I am wrong, but I think the Nittany Lions, I think they have that whole loss to Ohio State in the back of their mind, and they're going to make sure that it doesn't happen again. So for Penn State, their key is they got to get everyone involved. It just can't be the Cal Fisher show. They got to get Toby Ezionu involved, got to get Brett Wildman involved, Michal Kowal needs to get involved, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Cole Bogner, I know, is going to run the offense well. Merck is going to have himself a big-time game. Ryan Merck is going to have himself a big-time game at the libero position. So he's done really well following the graduation of Will Bantle. So for Penn State, I think this is their time to shine. And for Ohio State, it's nothing personal. I think Ohio State has some good players. I just think Penn State just has a few more horses in the back that's going to gallop the Nittany Lions to victory. But I would not be surprised if that match went 5 sets. I think that match honestly could go 5 sets, and I really want it to go 5 sets because these are two really good teams. Two teams that won their respective conference that are facing one another for a spot in the semifinals. What more could you really want? And this is the rubber match between these two teams. Remember, Penn State won the first meeting, Ohio State won the second meeting. Both actually won on the road, ironically enough. So for Penn State and Ohio State, this is probably going to be the barn burner of the night. Not to take anything away from Long Beach State Grand Canyon, but I really think Penn State, Ohio State is going to be that barn burner, and it's going to be in an incredible matchup. Now we got to move on to the semifinals. Barring, if I am correct, UCLA Long Beach State, this would be round 3 between the Beach and the Bruins, with the Bruins having taken both matchups in the regular season. Now the Bruins, here's the thing about UCLA. They obviously are all too well and all too familiar about facing Long Beach State in the NCAA Tournament. They lost to them last year after being up 2-0, and then they lost to the Beach in 2018 when they were up 2-1. They led late in set 4, and then Long Beach came galloping back and eventually won in set 5. For UCLA, they have to really, when Long Beach State is down for the count, they actually have to they have to go for the throat. That's what I'm trying to say here. It's so tough to predict Long Beach State versus UCLA just because it's the third meeting between these two teams, and as UC Irvine demonstrated against Long Beach State in the Big West Conference Tournament, it's so tough to beat a team 3 times in one season. That being said, it's been a while since UCLA and Long Beach State faced one another. It's been all the way back in February, which is the target date of when Alan Knipe and John Speraw want to face each other. And I think I'll say this. I think UCLA pulls it off. Now, I'm going to get a lot of flack from all the Long Beach State fans, but I think Long Beach State is 1 year away from beating UCLA. I think the Bruins have something brewing this season, and I think they make it to the national championship. I think John Speraw gets his chance at that national championship. And I think the UCLA offense is just too stacked, and Andrew Rowan, I have to give him so much credit. I think for Andrew Rowan to step in as a freshman setter, because setter I think is one of the most difficult positions to master at the collegiate level, mind you. It's just such a tough position. And for him to basically take the reins following the current events that happened with one of UCLA's top players quitting, I think it's quite incredible that that Andrew Rowan has stepped into that position, and UCLA just has a lot of options. They have Ido David, Merrick McHenry, who is the MPSF Tournament MVP, Ethan Champlin, Alex Knight. The list goes on and on for offensive options for UCLA, and you saw my interview with those 4 UCLA players that had double-digit kills against UC Irvine. Like, Andrew Rowan pretty much can feed it to anybody. And Andrew Rowan is a big boy. He's like 6'8", 6'9". He's got a wicked jump serve. He's definitely good at blocking, and I really think he was one of my top players to watch for early in the season, or one of my other players to watch for in my season previews for UCLA. So, for me, I think UCLA pulls it off against Long Beach State. This is no disrespect to Alan Knipe and the rest of the Beach, but I just think that UCLA is just too deep for the Beach this year. But I would not be surprised if the Beach just threw everything at UCLA, whether it's the kitchen sink, the couch, the big screen TV, heck, even the entire pyramid. I would not be surprised if UCLA got Long Beach State's best in that matchup. But for me, I think UCLA just barely pulls it off. Am I saying it goes 5? No. Am I going to predict a 5-set match? Probably not, but I will say it's going to be an intense match between UCLA and Long Beach State, if Long Beach State gets to the semifinals. If not, then Long Beach State busted my bracket, or Grand Canyon in that case busted my bracket. But either way, I have UCLA advancing to the national championship game. And now we have Penn State versus Hawaii, if my prediction comes true. Alright, so Hawaii obviously has been playing some darn good volleyball after their loss against Long Beach State in Big West Conference play. Now, for the Rainbow Warriors, I'll say this. They're really good. I only saw them last week in person. That's the only time I've seen Hawaii in person this season. But I will say, they're just that good. Jakob Tele is just a beast. I would not be surprised if he was AVCA Player of the Year. He's got lots of amazing options. He's got Dimitrios Muklias, Spiros Hakas, Guillerme Voss, Chaz Galloway. The list goes on and on for Hawaii. And Jakob Tele can even put that ball away. My thing is for Hawaii is that they really serve tough. Like, if Hawaii is on the service line with, like, Jakob Tele and all those other serving boys that serve tough, you better duck for cover, or you better pray that they're either serving wide, serving long, or serving into the net. Or your serve receive just has to be really good. It, like I said on Twitter, whenever Hawaii's on the service line, it feels like a tidal wave is about to crash on you. Your serve receive has to be really darn good against Hawaii. Otherwise, you are going to be at the mercy of the Rainbow Warriors. For Penn State, they have some darn good servers of their own, like Cal Fisher, Cole Bogner's pretty solid, and they've got some studs on their team. And Penn State was one of 2 teams, other than Long Beach State, to hand Hawaii a loss, and they're the only team to hand Hawaii a loss and not lose to them. Though the 2 teams only played one another this season, but I digress. So, for Hawaii and Penn State, I gotta go with Hawaii. I think Hawaii is the safe pick. Just because Hawaii, they're playing great volleyball, and you look at that senior class, it's so freaking amazing. I mean, it's not as big, but it's like, Jakob Tele wants to go out on top. And from what I'm hearing, it's like, some other guys might be on the way out, because they've graduated and whatnot, and they've kind of used up their COVID year or whatnot, but I mean, I can't fully confirm that, but I will say this, is that Hawaii obviously are men on missions. They want to win this national championship. They want to be the first team since UCLA did it in 1981 through 1984, which they eventually three-peated that, or they eventually four-peated to basically three-peat. So, for Hawaii, I have them advancing to the national championship. I think they have the serving, they have the offense that's clicking, and I think they don't have the pressure that's on them as opposed to last time, because they were undefeated when they played Penn State, and there's so much pressure when you're undefeated because everyone's expecting you to win every single game. You're number one in the nation, and then suddenly it comes crashing down on you when you face a team that basically is not number one, and then you're basically just trying to keep it together, but unfortunately it just falls apart. Also, it does not help that Hawaii had that super long winning streak, which dated back to God knows when, and then that got snapped as well. But now that Hawaii has no pressure on them in terms of keeping any sort of streaks alive, in terms of basically being undefeated, being number one, I think Hawaii mentally is going to be ready. And Charlie Waite said it best. His team has always been in championship mode or playoff mode since, heck, maybe Big West Conference play started. Heck, could be even further. So Hawaii is already in playoff mode, and I know it, and everyone else knows it, and I'm just also going to say this. Hawaii has yet to lose a road game or a neutral site game. Let that sink in right there. So no one can say Hawaii is going to do poorly outside of Stan Sheriff Center. We could throw that narrative away, just discard it, send it to the dumpster, and never recover it. So I got Hawaii advancing to the national championship, and my projected final is UCLA-Hawaii. I just think that's the best national championship in men's volleyball, Hawaii-UCLA. And as for my national champion, this one's going to be tough. You got the highly touted UCLA offense, and then you've got the also highly touted Hawaii offense, who basically just serves up a storm. Both teams are practically have their bases loaded in every position. Libero, setter, outside hitter, opposite, middle. They even have good depth off the bench, not just in terms of defensive specialists, but in serving specialists. My projected champion is going to be... Sorry, I had to do that. Drum roll. Hawaii. I think Hawaii wins it for... I think they three-peat this year. I think Hawaii three-peats this year. I 100% believe they have the players and they have the offense to basically keep up with UCLA. And honestly, this is no knock on John Sproul and his team, but I just think Hawaii, they've had to play, I would say, the toughest schedule. I mean, obviously the RPI shows that UCLA is just basically has the better schedule or the tougher schedule. But I think Hawaii has had to deal with a little more adversity. Obviously, UCLA had the loss to Penn State in the Big Ten Pac-12 Challenge, and then UCLA lost to Hawaii at Hawaii in front of 10,000 plus fans. This time around, I just think that Hawaii narrowly escapes with that win. I think they escape with the win. I really want it to be a 5-set match. I really do. I was kind of disappointed in last year's final where Hawaii swept Long Beach State. Don't get me wrong. I was not disappointed in Hawaii winning. I was just disappointed in the fact that it was a sweep. It was like, what happened? Why did Hawaii just sweep Long Beach State? I don't want a sweep. I want a barn burner. I want a humdinger, a dandy, a thriller, a roller coaster ride. I want that sort of thing. I want a final so thrilling that it makes my heart stop and it makes me want more. I don't want this whole sweep nonsense, because that's how you lose ratings, and that's how you lose viewers. I hate to bring this up, but it's like, you saw the Texas-Louisville women's final. It didn't garner as many viewers as the Wisconsin-Nebraska final from the previous year. Now, I'm not trying to stir the pot or anything, but obviously you compare a 3-set match to a 5-set match. It's like, we obviously wanted to see a 5-set thriller, or at least a 4-set thriller. Like, if we're getting a 3-set sweep in the national championship between two touted teams and one team is just better, it's like, ugh. And I will give credit to Hawaii the past 2 seasons. They swept Long Beach State and BYU, respectively, in those years. But for me, I just want to see a thriller of a championship. And I will also give credit to Hawaii for being in the national championship match for the past 3 national collegiate men's volleyball tournaments. And I'm saying the name correct, but I will forever call it the NCAA Men's Volleyball Tournament. I do not care what anyone says. It is the NCAA Men's Volleyball Tournament, and if I get thrown in jail or I get corrected on it, so freaking be it. But for me, my National Collegiate Men's Volleyball Champion in Division 1-2 or Division 1 is Hawaii. I'm going to get a lot of flack from UCLA fans, and y'all can pretty much hate on me and just troll me if for some reason Hawaii doesn't make it that far. I could already feel the hate from everybody, from UCLA fans coming already, and they're not even in the chat room. But I will say this, I will stick to my prediction of Hawaii, and they're in win now mode. Now, I'm not sure how many seniors UCLA has. I haven't really seen them since they played UC Irvine, but I will say they've had a fantastic season, and I'm not going to try to take anything away from them, but they're just a phenomenal program. And the last MPSF team to win a national championship was 2010. Now, I want to say that UC Irvine was still in the MPSF, and there was no Big West Conference tournament. If that is the case. But if we're talking about current MPSF and Big West Conference teams, the last MPSF team to win a national championship in men's volleyball was 2010 when Stanford won, which is quite fantastic, quite mind-blowing if you ask me. I'm just going to, UC Irvine actually was in the MPSF back in 2013. So technically the last MPSF team to win a national championship was UC Irvine back in 2013. However, UC Irvine isn't really classified as a MPSF team right now, as now they are a Big West Conference team. So technically the last MPSF team as of right now is Stanford. It's kind of like how Nebraska was one time in the Big 12, and they were not in the Big 10. So yeah, I'm blowing everyone's mind, and my mind was blown about this. But it's like the last MPSF team to win a national championship in men's volleyball was 2013 with UC Irvine. But if you want to be super technical about it, Stanford was the last team. Just because theoretically Irvine is a Big West Conference team, but they were in the MPSF at the time. So they were the last MPSF team to win a national championship. Mind equals blown right there. All right, that is enough in terms of trying to make heads or tails out of what is what. I'm sorry if I'm turning everyone's brain into mush right there, but that's going to do it for all of the NCAA Men's Volleyball National Collegiate Tournament. I do want to give a shout out to Stevens College of the NCAA Division 3 as they knocked off North Central 3-1 in the NCAA Division 3 final, and it was quite the thriller, or it was quite the NCAA tournament. And believe it or not, the NCAA Division 3 tournament has an expanded tournament as they have 16 teams in this whole little tournament, and Stevens College was actually the 3 seed from what I'm seeing, and then North Central I don't even think was technically seeded. I want to say they were the 5 seed? I don't know. But they were probably the 5 seed, and they eventually lost to Stevens, the 3 seed. So the national champion in NCAA Division III men's volleyball is Stevens College, which is quite impressive. And it's their second national championship in Division III. Their first came in 2015, so I've heard, as leading Stevens College in the win was Kobe Sherman, who had 16 kills. Percy Bickford had 11 kills. So that was kind of your leader in terms of the two matches right there, or in terms of Stevens right there. North Central was led by Luke Schmidt, who had 10 kills, Jared Moser, 9 kills, Jeremy Cardenas, 7 kills. All in all, it was a great match as Stevens won the first set in dominating fashion, 25-15. They won the second set, 26-24. Third set, North Central just dominated that third set, 25-15. And then Stevens was able to squeak out that fourth set, 25-22, en route to winning NCAA Men's Volleyball Championship number 2 in their program. So congratulations to Stevens College for winning the NCAA Division III National Championship. All right, so that is that for NCAA Men's Volleyball. Just want to give them a little bit of a quick shout-out right there, just because it's not all about NCAA Division I Men's Volleyball or whatnot. All right, but now let's get on into some NCAA Beach Volleyball, as the NCAA Beach Volleyball bracket was released. However, before we get on into that, I do need to go over the automatic qualifiers from each conference. So UCLA won the Pac-12 tournament, and it was quite the eventful Pac-12 tournament. They actually lost to Stanford, I want to say, in the quarterfinals. And they also, in addition, USC also lost to Cal in the quarterfinals in the top bracket. But eventually UCLA was able to beat USC in the contenders bracket, and then UCLA was able to beat Cal in the Pac-12 championship final, which it was no surprise. It was either going to be USC or UCLA, but I was very surprised to see Cal and Stanford pulling off upsets. So shout out to the NorCal teams for pulling off those upsets. Unfortunately for Cal, they just fell short. Stanford also fell short in the contenders bracket semifinal, or the contenders bracket final, to UCLA, as unfortunately it just wasn't meant to be. They just weren't meant to pull out that second win. It is tough to beat a team 2 times in the span of 2 days, but it is what it is. TCU won the 2C SA Conference Tournament Championship. They actually lost to GCU in the first round of the tournament, but then they pretty much ran the table the rest of the way. We had a lot of April anarchy, as USC Beach Volleyball put it, as TCU had to win their way through the contenders bracket, and they eventually wound up winning the 2C SA Championship. LMU won the West Coast Conference Championship, which isn't really too much of a surprise, but Pepperdine kind of gave them all that they could handle. But for the Lions, they just roared loud and proud, and they won that conference championship, which was quite incredible. As I mentioned last week, Long Beach State won the Big West Conference Championship. Florida Atlantic won the Conference USA. Georgia State won the Sun Belt Conference, which they're kind of a dark horse to win the NCAA tournament, but you got to watch out for them. Stetson won the ASUN Conference Tournament, which isn't really too much of a surprise. Stetson always has a consistent beach volleyball program. UT Martin won the OVC, the OV Conference, and then Texas A&M Corpus Christi won the Southland Conference, which was the last of the automatic qualifiers. So those are your 9 automatic qualifiers, as it's a bracket of 16. Now, before I get into the NCAA Beach Volleyball bracket, or National Collegiate Beach Volleyball bracket, because they're under the same umbrella that NCAA Men's Volleyball is under, which I think is annoying. But I will also say this. The NCAA Beach Volleyball bracket is totally changed. There is no contenders bracket. It's now single elimination. So basically, it's basically a 16-team bracket, and basically, if you lose, you're out for good. There's no second chance. There is no contenders bracket. If you lose, you're gone. Get out. Pack your things. You leave. No soup for you. Anyway, so for the NCAA or National Collegiate Beach Volleyball bracket, UCLA is the 1 seed, which is no real surprise. TCU is the 2 seed. No surprise there. USC is the 3 seed. Not too big of a surprise. Florida State 4 seed. No surprise there. The 5 seed is LSU. Also not a surprise. They've had themselves a solid season. LMU is the 6 seed. That's not a surprise right there. They've been consistent, even though they've had their ups and downs. 7 seed is Grand Canyon, which that's also not too big of a surprise right there. They play in a tough conference, and they also basically have had a good season. They haven't had too many bad losses here and there. They just struggle against some of the top tier competition. Now the 8th seed is Cal, which I want to say if it weren't for them winning the Pac-12 or placing runner up in the Pac-12 tournament, then I don't think they get in as the 8th seed. I think they would have been a little bit lower, but they pulled off quite a whole lot of wins, a good amount of good wins, like against USC and Stanford. They made their way all the way. They won the winners bracket, and then they just fell short in the Pac-12 championship. As once you reach the Pac-12 championship, there is no, you go into the losers bracket. It's not like tennis where it's basically 30 all or deuce or whatnot. All right, so now for some of the opponents. So the 9th seed taking on Cal is Long Beach State. That's going to be a very interesting matchup. Now, Long Beach State's been playing some darn good volleyball as of late, but here's my thing. Can they play really well against a top 10 caliber team? Now, they beat Hawaii, but it kind of was expected that they were eventually going to get that win over Hawaii eventually. But for Long Beach State, this is their moment to shine, and they better hope. They have seen Cal this year, but that was way early in the season. They now have to really put their head down and play their best volleyball. And then the 10th seed taking on Grand Canyon in the first round is Stanford. Now, Stanford, I think, is going to be a dangerous matchup for Grand Canyon. I think Stanford, led by Charlie Ekstrom, is going to be a very, very tough out for the Lobes. I think Stanford is basically... I would give Stanford a good chance at beating Grand Canyon, but we'll see. The 11th seed taking on LMU, Loyola Marymount, is Hawaii. Now, Hawaii got in as an at-large from the Big West Conference, which I think is no surprise. Hawaii had a win over LSU, and they did have a little bit of a stumble against one other team. I think it was Arizona or something. I'm not sure. But Hawaii, unfortunately lost in the Big West Conference Tournament winners bracket final to Long Beach State. Then they had to make their way through the contenders bracket, lost to Cal Poly in the contenders bracket final, and then they basically had to see Cal Poly and Long Beach State do battle for the Big West Conference crown on their home sand. But now Hawaii is in the NCAA or National Collegiate Tournament, and they play LMU. I think this is winnable for the Rainbow Wahine. However, LMU is playing some darn good volleyball as of late. The thing that could benefit Hawaii is LMU didn't really play anyone great outside of Pepperdine in the West Coast Conference Tournament. But we'll see. The 12th seed taking on LSU is Florida Atlantic. Now, Florida Atlantic, they are an under-the-radar team. I think they are decent, but against LSU, it's going to be so tough to beat that team. But we'll see. Like, crazier things have happened in the past. Like, you saw what happened with Georgia State last year. I mean, they pulled off some pretty good upsets as well. So, we'll see what happens with LSU, Florida Atlantic. The 13th seed taking on Florida State is Florida International, or FIU. Now, Florida International won its conference. I should also mention that FAU got in as an at-large. Florida International got in as... I'm sorry, Florida International was the one that got in as an at-large. FAU got in as the Conference USA champion. So FIU got in as an at-large, but now they play Florida State. It's the battle of the Florida teams, and I don't want to say this in a rude way, but I think Florida State's kind of got this one. Now, anything could happen at this point, but Florida State, this is kind of their moment to shine, and they know they want to be back in the national championship game after they fell short last season. So we'll see what happens with FIU and Florida State, but for right now, the Noles look like the favorite on paper. Then the 14th seed taking on number 3 USC is Georgia State. Now, I said Georgia State is a dark horse, but they're going to be the biggest dark horse against USC. Now, Georgia State had themselves a fantastic NCAA tournament run last year. However, against USC, against players like the Norse twins, Delaney Maple, all those sort of players, it's Megan Kraft, got to throw her name into the mix. It's going to be tough. But don't be surprised if Georgia State manages to give USC an ugly game. Like, I could see Georgia State pulling out all the stops in order to beat the Trojans, or the Women of Troy. But I just think USC is going to probably come out on top. Because remember, this is single elimination, and USC is kind of in that battle mode where they can't afford to lose at this point. Because if they lose once, they're out for good. Now, the 15th seed taking on TCU is Stetson. Now, Stetson has pulled upsets in the past. In the past, they were the 8th seed and they took down USC. Or I want to say they were the 16th seed and they took down the top seed USC back when NCAA Beach Volleyball was in its infancy stages. Back when it was Collegiate. Oh, sorry, I accidentally muted myself. But back when it was Collegiate Beach Volleyball. But for Stetson, they play a TCU team that's playing dang good volleyball this year. Yes, they had a little bit of a trip up earlier in the 2CSA conference tournament, but I will say this. I think the Horned Frogs are ready to roll, and Stetson's going to have to play their best volleyball. Because if they don't, then it's basically game over. So if Stetson could have some of that comeback magic like they did back when they beat USC, they're going to have to do so. Because if not, then it's game over for them. Now, if you're keeping track here, there are 2 automatic qualifiers, and there's 1 spot left in the NCAA tournament. So UT Martin and Texas A&M Corpus Christi actually are going to be playing a play-in match. So I think that is going to be played. Doesn't show on the NCAA tournament bracket, which I think is stupid. But whoever wins that matchup gets to play UCLA. Okay, so the opening round, or the play-in matchup, will be on May 3rd. UT Martin plays Texas A&M Corpus Christi at 5 p.m., and then after that is round 1 against UCLA. And I will say this, whoever gets UCLA is going to have to basically play their best volleyball. It's going to be so tough to beat the Bruins, and UCLA is playing some very good volleyball as of late. I think they're over the USC losses and any other loss. Yes, they did have the trip up against Stanford in the Pac-12 tournament, but it's better to lose now than to lose in the NCAA tournament. Or the National Collegiate Beach Volleyball Championship, as y'all like to call it. But for UCLA, I think they're back on their you-know-what, and they've got their swagger back. So I think for UCLA, they got the bad loss out of the way. They could only go up from here on out, and I think for the Bruins, or the Lady Bruins, I think the sky's the limit for them. I don't think if serve holds, I don't think they're going to get too much of a challenge until they face, heaven knows, Florida State or LSU. And I'm probably going to bet that it's going to be LSU. But as for my predictions here, I'm going to make predictions here as well. I guess the opening round, I'll take Texas A&M Corpus Christi. I'll be bold and say Texas A&M Corpus Christi pulls out the win. As for the first round, it doesn't matter who pulls out the win between that matchup. I just think UCLA is going to win that first round matchup. Now, Cal and Long Beach State. This one's going to be tough to predict. Cal played so great in that Pac-12 tournament. did not lose until the Pac-12 tournament final, where they lost at the hands of UCLA. By the way, before I continue, gotta give a shout out to David Secrix, who popped in the chat room. He said, "What's good?" Okay, so Cal takes on Long Beach State. This one's gonna be tough. I mean, Cal played some darn good volleyball, but Long Beach State might be turning the corner. However, I kind of have to defer to Cal on this one. I think Cal is going to be ready for Long Beach State. I could already feel the hate coming from Long Beach State fans, or their beach volleyball fans at least. And this is no disrespect to Mike Campbell, but I just think Cal being battle-tested in that Pac-12 tournament is really going to help the Golden Bears out. Long Beach State, obviously, they played really great in the Big West Conference tournament, but other than that win against Hawaii, they didn't really beat anyone of significance. I mean, Cal Poly was up there in terms of good teams, but it's like they weren't overly great. Then LSU versus Florida Atlantic, or FAU. I gotta give it to LSU. They're kind of a perennial NCAA team that does not lose a whole lot in the NCAA tournament. Ever since they had Taryn Cloth and Kristen Nuss, they've always been cemented as a solid NCAA tournament contender. They don't have a Teran Rodriguez and a Kristen Nuss now. However, I think LSU is still going to get past the first round. Then we have Florida State versus Florida International, or FIU. Give me the Noles. I think the Noles are built to win this year, and they want redemption for last year. They have the players. They just have to basically not lose when it truly matters. Then we have Georgia State versus USC. I'm sorry to Georgia State fans, but I gotta go with the Trojans on this one, or the Women of Troy. I just think USC is playing. Obviously, they had a not-so-great Pac-12 tournament, but they were bound to have a not-so-good weekend. I mean, obviously, they lost the Center of Effort Challenge to UCLA. They also lost to TCU, but they didn't have Megan Kraft. But they have some good wins on the season as well. But I think for USC, now that they got that bad weekend out of the way, I think they're basically ready for this NCAA tournament. Then we've got Hawaii versus LMU. This one's tough. I think Hawaii has potential. I think Hawaii can pull off the win, but I just think LMU is going to I think LMU, based on experience, I think they just barely pull it off. Again, I'm sorry to Hawaii fans. I can't pick your team to win 2 tournaments in one weekend, but I just think LMU is going to be a little too much for Hawaii. Save your hate comments for later if I somehow jinx your men's volleyball team. Anyway, then we have Stanford and Grand Canyon. All right, so I have not picked an upset as of this round. I'm going to pick an upset right now. I think Stanford beats Grand Canyon. I think Grand Canyon has struggled against the top-tier talent. I mean, obviously they beat TCU, and they made it all the way to the 2CSA championship, but it's like, that's been only their great weekend. That's the only good weekend that they've had. I think Stanford, being battle-tested in that Pac-12 tournament, really gave them a boost. And yes, they did fall short in the contenders bracket final to UCLA. However, I think the Cardinal is going to be ready to go, and they don't want to send Charlie Ekstrom off with a first-round loss. So I'm picking Stanford to upset Grand Canyon. That's my upset of the first round. And then lastly, we have TCU and Stetson. Stetson, I love y'all. I think y'all are a great program, but TCU is going to win this one. Then the second round, or the quarterfinals. I like how they call it second round and not quarterfinals. That's stupid. Anyway, so if serve holds, UCLA, Cal, I'm taking UCLA. Basically, it's Bears versus Bears, but I got UCLA going on to the semifinals. I think the Bruins are stacked all across the board with Lexi Denneberg, Devin Newberry, Jaden Whitmarsh, the Van Winkle girls, Abby Van Winkle, and Tessa Van Winkle, and all those other players. If I missed any, I'm sorry, but I think UCLA is just too stacked for Cal. And then the next matchup we would have LSU versus Florida State. Florida State has had LSU's number for quite a number of years and quite a number of matchups, but I think Florida State is going to continue to have that narrative. They're going to continue to roll with that narrative. I think Florida State beats LSU. I think LSU is going to give Florida State all that it can handle in Gulf Shores, because this is being played at Gulf Shores, Alabama. But I think Florida State is going to eke out the win, because Florida State is also built to win this year, and they want redemption for last year. Then we have LMU versus USC, the battle of the Los Angeles schools. As much as I want to see LMU pull off the upset, history has shown that the Lions have not fared well against USC. So give me USC to advance to the semifinals. This is no disrespect to the Lions or Loyola Marymount, but I just think that LMU is just not deep enough to take down USC, or USC is just too deep for the Lions. And then lastly, in the quarterfinals, we have Stanford versus TCU. Stanford, I like y'all as a semi-Cinderella story, but it's like TCU is just too good. They were pretty much undefeated up until the Center of Effort Challenge, where they lost a heartbreaker to UCLA, and they haven't really had too many bad losses this season outside of the GCU loss in the 2CSA conference tournament. So I'm going to take TCU to beat Stanford in the quarterfinals. Then in the semifinals, we have UCLA versus Florida State. Now, Florida State did beat UCLA earlier in the season, but I think UCLA is better than previously against Florida State, and I think the Bruins are going to advance to that national championship. And then we have USC versus TCU. I want to go with USC, but TCU is just too darn good. I think TCU, this is the deepest roster TCU has had, and I got to give credit to Hector Gutierrez. He's a fantastic coach, and he definitely deserves a spot in the national championship. This is no disrespect to Dane Blanton, who picked up his 100th win earlier in the season, but I just think USC just doesn't have the horses like they had last year. They just don't have that firepower when they had with Tina Graudina and Haley Harward and all those other seniors from last year. But I think TCU ekes out the win over USC, but with Megan Kraft, it is going to be big time having her. I just think that TCU just has too much firepower across the board. And then the final, we have TCU versus UCLA. What am I going to do with this matchup? TCU is stacked across the board, but so is UCLA. I want to give the edge to the Horned Frogs, but for UCLA, they're just playing good as of late, outside of that loss to Stanford. You know what? I'm going to give the edge to UCLA. I think UCLA is the national champion in beach volleyball. TCU fans are probably going to hate me, and I'm probably never going to go to Dallas-Fort Worth ever again. But for UCLA, I will say this. I think they've battled adversity this year. Obviously, Devin Newberry had to struggle her way through the USC match. I think the first round, and then she got through that and eventually was able to get some R&R. But for the rest of UCLA, I think they're just so talented and so deep. I think that UCLA just has too much horsepower, or bear power in this case, for TCU. Now, am I saying that TCU is going to lose badly? No. I think that TCU is going to basically throw everything at UCLA. But I just think UCLA will pull out the win, and I would not be surprised if the final is decided in the final pairing of the duel. So, overall, I have UCLA winning the national championship in NCAA Beach Volleyball. I know everyone and their moms are probably going to hate me, but think of it as a little redemption for me not picking UCLA in men's volleyball, but I digress. All right, so that is going to do it for my predictions for NCAA Beach Volleyball. Before we go on into a commercial break, I have some Pro Beach Volleyball shout-outs I want to give, and I missed this Pro Beach Volleyball shout-out from last week. I actually want to give a shout-out to Cody Caldwell and Chase Frischman. Chase Frischman is a former UC San Diego men's volleyball player, while Cody Caldwell is a current player of the Orange County Stunners. They actually won gold in the Norqueca Beach Tour event not this past Sunday, but the Sunday on April 24th in Aguascalientes, Mexico, as they won gold while the U.S. women's national team, or the U.S. pair of Gina Urango and Carly Skojit, took silver. In the final, Frischman and Caldwell beat Juan Virgin and Miguel Sarabia 14-21, 22-20, and 15-7. By the way, Juan Virgin, for those that don't know, is actually a 2016 Olympian. So for Cody Caldwell, this is actually his first gold in the Norqueca tournament. This is Frischman's second gold medal. But for Cody Caldwell to earn some gold medal while having to balance out the NVA, it's quite incredible. And it keeps him in shape and it keeps him balanced. So good for Cody Caldwell on winning gold and winning his first gold in the Norqueca tournament. And they went 6-0 in the entire tournament. So good job to Chase Frischman and to Cody Caldwell. So there's that right there in terms of the men's beach volleyball shout out. And then on the women's side, we had Team Tiger, a.k.a. what's their face? Kristen Nuss and Teran Rodriguez winning gold in their most recent tournament, as they actually won the I don't know what tournament this was, but it was a tournament in Uberlândia, Brazil, as they actually won a 3-set thriller, as they wound up winning very narrowly in that third set, 16-21, 24-22, and 15-13, which was quite incredible if you ask me, as they won. It was the Elite 16 tournament in Uberlândia, as this is their first gold medal together in the Elite 16, but it's probably like their fourth or fifth gold medal altogether as a pair, because they've won gold in basically in AVP events, but now they continue to basically they're continuing to impress me by the day, and they are basically the U.S. pair of tomorrow, and they could be an Olympic pair, and I'm excited to see what they could do. And they even had to beat Kelly Cheng and Sarah Hughes along the way, which is unfortunate for Sarah Hughes and Kelly Cheng. They lost to the U.S., but hey, Teran Rodriguez and Kristen Nuss are basically on the rise. Like, Hughes and Cheng have already had their success, but now we're getting more U.S. women's beach volleyball success with Teran Rodriguez and Kristen Nuss, and for them to win gold outside of the U.S. is quite incredible. So, good job to Teran Rodriguez and Kristen Nuss, and Cheng and Hughes unfortunately lost in the third place match to a pair from Brazil. But hey, it's all good. Finishing top four is nothing to sneeze at. But this tournament belonged to Kristen Nuss and Teran Rodriguez, as they were able to win gold, and it's hats off to them for winning gold. So that's pretty much the Pro Beach Volleyball Shoutout Roundup. And we're going to take ourselves a quick little commercial break. When we come back, we're actually going to talk some junior college men's volleyball in California. And we're also going to talk some high school boys volleyball in California. And we will also talk the NVA, as Event 2 is going to be underway this weekend. So keep it locked here. You are listening to Set Point here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hey sports fans, do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Wine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all. And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well. Football, hockey, collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it all, and we're going to whine about it all. So join me Monday at 8 p.m. on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, ladies and sinners. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour, every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, this is a show built for the Vegas sports fans, where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each and every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter, at SinCities_IESR, and you can speak with me, the host, Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter, at any time. Be happy to reply. Always want to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
With segment number 2 of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely do check out all of our amazing shows, such as Chi-Town Weekly with Adam Karnick, which goes on yesterday or Monday, 1 hour before me primarily. Also check out Let's Whine About DMV Sports with Mike Pat every Friday at 6 p.m. Pacific Time. Also check out Cale Henderson's show, Sin City Sports, which will be going on at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, barring any snags within Cale's schedule. With all that said and done, let's get on into segment number 2 of Set Point. We'll have some 3C2A men's volleyball discussion here. As, oh man, on Saturday I attended the most thrilling 3C2A men's volleyball final I've seen in a while. So, for those that don't know what the 3C2A is, it's the California Community College Athletic Association, which is basically junior college in California. So, long story short, I actually wasn't planning on being a member of the media. However, it's like, I won the Wi-Fi to the gymnasium, the El Camino. This took place at El Camino College in Torrance, California. And I just wanted the Wi-Fi, because that gymnasium has the toughest Wi-Fi to tweet out videos and sometimes text people. It's very tough. And this is no knock on El Camino. It's a great facility, but it's like, oh my goodness. It's like, its Wi-Fi is so much better. Like, once you get access to the Wi-Fi, boom. It's almost as bad as Long Beach State's Wi-Fi in the Pyramid. Or Long Beach State signal in the Pyramid. In a packed house. Either way, all I just wanted was the Wi-Fi, and the lady, there was like the, I guess, director or SID or something of that sort. She thought she was wondering what I was doing, and I was like, I just want the Wi-Fi, and I told her I was going to be live tweeting out the match, and I told her I was kind of with Orange Coast College, and I told her I knew the coach, and I told her I knew everyone at Orange Coast, and she basically gave me a media badge. Though I did have to buy a ticket prior, because I didn't think anyone would believe me when I told them, oh, I'm a member of the media. Because anyone could say, I'm a member of the media, and it's like, no, it's so tough to believe people nowadays. So I didn't think anyone would believe me at first. So I was just under the impression, I just wanted the Wi-Fi, and then they just gave me a media badge. It's like, just have this, show this at the door, then you're good to go in. And it's like, thank you, I guess. Anyway, so the 3C2A men's volleyball finals, or semifinals, consisted of Orange Coast College versus San Diego Mesa College, and then Long Beach City College Orange Coast College versus Moore Park College, and Long Beach City College versus San Diego Mesa College. So Moore Park College was kind of the Cinderella of this tournament. They were the 7th seed, but they knocked off the number 2 seed Irvine Valley in 3 sets in the quarterfinals, which was very surprising, except Moore Park had themselves a great matchup. They actually had quite the matchup strength against Irvine Valley. But against Orange Coast, it more so went Orange Coast's way, as they just rolled through the first 2 sets. The 3rd set, it kind of slipped away from Orange Coast. They led early on. Moore Park then eventually went on a little serving run. Before going into set number 3, Moore Park had 0 blocks, 0 service aces, and they were hitting 0 going into that 3rd set. It's tough to win a match when you're facing the reigning state champion and your stats are 0. But Moore Park changed all that. They wound up winning that 3rd set. And then the 4th set, Moore Park jumped out to an early 5-0 lead. But then Orange Coast reestablished themselves. They started playing better volleyball. And they wound up taking the 4th set in fairly convincing fashion. So it was an ugly match, but all in all, I kind of predicted Orange Coast would win in 4, or OCC. So the Pirates advanced to the final, the 3C2A men's volleyball final, where they played Long Beach City, and Long Beach City just swept San Diego Mesa. Long story short, Long Beach City just pretty much was stomping all over everybody. It was to the point, going into this final, that Long Beach City had won 41 consecutive straight sets. And they had won, it doesn't show on here, but I think they were 19-1 going into this record. So they had won 19 in a row after losing their season opener against Irvine Valley. But in the final against Orange Coast, this is kind of the breakdown match here. So the first set, Orange Coast actually made a lineup change. Their libero, Hide Nakamura, who's going to UCLA next year, he actually played outside hitter, and I think normally he plays outside hitter, and he actually hails from Japan, and making that lineup change was perfect because he passes the ball really well. And Travis Turner did tell the media and me that he wanted his best passers on the court together. So eventually, Hide Nakamura going to the outside or playing outside hitter was beneficial, while Tyler Vetter was the libero, and he was prepared for that moment. In the first set, Orange Coast led 21-16, and then Long Beach City eventually tied it up at 21-21, and then it was tied 23-23, but then a net violation on Long Beach City, and then a kill from Hide Nakamura. Keep in mind, Hide Nakamura is only 5'10", but he was able to put down the kill to give Orange Coast the first set, 25-23, which was very impressive. It snapped Long Beach City's 41 consecutive set winning streak. Yeah, it snapped 41 consecutive sets won, which was quite impressive. But Orange Coast took that first set. The second set, Long Beach City kind of reestablished themselves. They just picked themselves up off the mat. They had a lot of good players standing out. Matthew Piniella was one of them. Georgi Benev was another. Cole Oliver served really tough. Nice thing about Long Beach City, they serve really tough. And when they serve tough, you're at the mercy of them. And that was kind of the case for Orange Coast in the previous two matchups. They just could not have an answer for Long Beach City's tough serving. Second set, Long Beach City won that second set 25-17. Then in the third set, it was quite tight. It was 10-7, and then Orange Coast got yellow card. Their head coach got yellow card after a lift call. And then I'm thinking, this better light a fire in the Pirates' bellies. And it kind of did. It was 10-10, but eventually Long Beach City wound up winning that third set 25-21. Then the fourth set, Orange Coast got off to an early lead, and they just built off that early lead. And despite Long Beach City trying to nibble away at the lead, getting it down to as little as like 5 or 4, Orange Coast took that fourth set 25-20, and it was going 5 sets. The last time the 3C2A men's volleyball championship had a 5-setter was 2014, where Orange Coast was actually in that final, and they actually wound up winning in 5 sets, despite nearly giving up a 2-0 lead. Now, before we go on to that 5th set, the 5-set records between these two teams were Long Beach City was 0-1, while Orange Coast was 1-1. Long Beach City had not been involved in a whole lot of 5-setters. Their only 5-setter was Irvine Valley early in the season, which the Lasers managed to beat the Vikings in 5 sets. Long Beach City had just been steamrolling everybody. They had been sweeping everybody outside of Orange Coast. But honestly, Orange Coast's record was 1-1. They beat San Diego Mesa on the road in 5 sets. And then their lone loss in 5 sets was to Irvine Valley, which they fell behind 0-2, which that first set they could have won, but unfortunately they didn't. Then the next 2 sets they wound up winning, and then the 5th set just fell apart for Orange Coast. But I think that might have been the turning point for the Pirates. I think for them that was kind of what really keyed the turnaround for them. Excuse me for 1 second. Sorry, just a little bit of a cough. But 5th set, Orange Coast got off to a sluggish start. They missed a serve and then got aced on the following point. But then eventually used a 6-1 run to go up 6-3. And they eventually went up 7-4 after a surprise kill from the back row from Sebastian Lara. I think the 6th point was from Sebastian Lara, which was Doug, it's tough to say in an audio sequence, but there was a big attack from Long Beach City. It was dug up, and then Sebastian Lara just went for the kill from the back row, and then it caught Long Beach City by surprise, and it forced them into a timeout. Orange Coast pretty much held the lead throughout the entire set after they trailed early in that set. However, Long Beach City did not make it easy. They got to within 1 a bunch of times, but they just could not get anywhere closer. They just could not tie that set up. And eventually it was 13-12. Long Beach City misses a serve. It was a very good serve, and it was nearly in, but it was like 1 or 2 feet out of bounds, as it was championship point for Orange Coast. Sebastian Lara, who was their best player on the court, he served up a tough serve. it got shanked over to the other side of the net, and Miles Henderson just hammered that ball down, and the libero for Long Beach City just could not get to it. And that's how Orange Coast repeated as 3C2A men's volleyball champions. And as you all saw on Twitter, Travis Turner, the head coach of Orange Coast College's men's volleyball team, he actually was a former Set Point guest. So I have to give him a hats off to him on winning the 3C2A men's volleyball championship. It's his 4th title as a head coach, which is darn right impressive. And it's Orange Coast's 9th title as a men's volleyball program. And it's actually the first time a men's volleyball champion has repeated since 2007-2008 when Irvine Valley accomplished that feature. Ironically enough, 2008 was when they beat Orange Coast in the final. So as for the final statistics, Orange Coast was led by Sebastian Lara. He is actually a bounce back from Loyola of Chicago. I was wondering where he came from, and then he actually was at Santiago Canyon. He was at Santiago Canyon College for a little bit, and then he reached out to Travis Turner, the head coach, and he was persistent, and thankfully for Travis Turner, he let him be on the team, and he was eventually on the team, and the first 2 weeks, Sebastian Lara really showed his stuff, as Lara led the way for the Pirates with 23 kills. He had 5 digs, he hit .370, he had 3 blocks, 2 solo stuffs, and 1 block assist. He was just absolutely amazing. And believe it or not, he actually had 5 digs, which I want to say that might have been a season high because he hasn't really dug the ball all that much. But the fact that he just really played well. He served tough. It didn't really show in the serving statistics, but all in all, he also had 2 assists, by the way. Lara just really stepped up. He was the tournament MVP. Miles Henderson also chipped in 11 kills. His brother Brock Henderson, who was the starting setter, had 6 kills, no hitting errors, 32 assists. He made all-tournament. Hide Nakamura had 8 kills, which was actually 3rd on the team in that match. And he also chipped in 8 digs. He also made all-tournament. Tyler Vetter had 8 digs. As a team, Orange Coast hit .291, and they also outblocked Long Beach 9-5. Though Long Beach outdug Orange Coast 48-33. Like, Long Beach was digging a lot of good balls, and I gotta give the Vikings a whole lot of credit on everything that they did. Especially serving. They had 9 service aces, and they had 4 players with 2 or more service aces. Matthew Pinella had 23 kills, but he had 12 hitting errors, but it was just a fantastic night for him. He probably would have been the MVP. He also had 3 service aces and 7 digs, and 3 block assists as well. Georgi Benev had 14 kills. He had 2 service aces, 9 digs. Julian Zavala, the libero, who actually was converted as an outside hitter, he had 12 digs. Sean Nguyen, the setter, he had 10 digs to go along with his 50 assists and 2 service aces and 1 kill. Cole Oliver had 7 kills, 2 service aces, and 8 digs. Cian Slade had 9 kills, no hitting errors, and he hit .692. And Luca Mamone had 5 kills, only 2 hitting errors, which Long Beach City's middles reminded me of Long Beach State's middles. They have probably the best middle blocker tandem in the state or in the 3C2A. I mean, Orange Coast has Neil Finnegan and Elgin Liu, who only combined for 1 hitting error and 8 kills on 15 attempts, but I just think Cian Slade and Luca Mamone just were consistent, especially in this match. But unfortunately for the Vikings, they fell just short of Orange Coast as the Pirates win championship number 9, and the Vikings will have to wait to win championship number 11 next season. It was a fantastic final. This is what championship matches were all about. And honestly, this is what I want in the national championship final. I want a nail-biter, barn-burner, humdinger, dandy of a matchup. Not this whole sweeping matchup. I don't want a sweep. If it's a sweep in the national championship or the championship match in general, it just takes away from the dramatics and all the excitement, and we don't get to see a whole lot of the match, and viewers don't get to see a whole lot of the teams and whatnot. So there's that. But congratulations to the Pirates. I do feel slightly bad for Long Beach City just because last year they lost in the 3C2A final to Orange Coast. As an OCC alum, I definitely want to give a hats off to Long Beach City. Their coaching staff is amazing. Jonathan Shred is a fantastic coach. Some of their players I have a lot of respect for, like Sean Nguyen. That dude is very respectable. I talked to him after the game. He said he is hoping he gets to play at the 4-year level. I hope he does. He is a fantastic talent, and if he doesn't, I hope he does great in other areas, and I wish him the best with his future endeavors. I would have picked him as tournament MVP had Long Beach City won, but it probably would have gone to Pinella, just because setters get zero love. But all in all, for Long Beach City, it was a fantastic season for them. They just fell short in the championship match, but they'll be back. All right, that is that for some 3C2A men's volleyball talk. We'll talk a little about some CIF Southern Section boys volleyball, as I didn't talk about this last week, but Division 1 has a new format. I'm just going to limit to Division 1. It's pool play, and it's just 8 teams, and it's 4 teams in 2 pools. So Pool A consists of Loyola as the top seed, Corona Del Mar as the 2 seed in that pool, Beckman as the 3 seed in that pool, and then Edison of Huntington Beach as the 4 seed. In Pool B, Newport Harbor is the top seed in Pool B. Miracosta of Manhattan Beach is the 2 seed in Pool B. Huntington Beach is the 3 seed in Pool B. And then Mater Dei, yes, the same Mater Dei that is really good at football, is the 4 seed in Pool B. So, in the first round, because tonight is round 2 of pool play, basically they were all sweeps except for one match. Loyola, it was basically 1 versus 3 and 2 versus 4, and all the home teams won. Except one match had to go 5, and that was Newport Harbor versus Huntington Beach. Now, the Sailors and the Oilers, they're not big-time rivals, but they're great league rivals, and they've had classic rivalries in the past. This was kind of one of those classic matches, and it was heated. I didn't attend this match because I actually had a PA announce for Corona Del Mar and Edison, but I will say this. It was a thriller from what I heard, and if that's how the first matchup is going to be, I can't wait to see what Newport Harbor Mater Dei and Newport Harbor Miracosta has in store. I'm actually going to see both of those matchups. Yes, I'm going to see Miracosta and Newport Harbor, even if it means deviating from watching the NCAA Men's Volleyball Championship. Well, then again, that matchup starts at 2 p.m., but the NVA is also happening this weekend as well. That for a little bit later. But just to make my predictions for that matchup right there, or for the finals of the CIF Southern Section Division 1 final, coming out of Pool B is kind of an obvious one. It's Newport Harbor. Now, Miracosta is just as good. They have their full team. They have Teran Rosenthal, who is a 6'8", 6'9" setter. They also have Victor Loyola going to Long Beach State. They also have a bunch of other really good, talented players, and their head coach is Avery Drost, who is an AVP player, which is cool. However, I think Newport Harbor having the home court advantage is going to prove to be too much for the Mustangs. Now, I'm looking too far ahead at that matchup, but I just think the Sailors have had to battle adversity, and a little adversity never hurts anybody. As for the team coming out of Pool A, I know I went backwards with Pool B versus Pool A. I think the team coming out of Pool A is going to be Corona Del Mar. Excuse me one second. Now, you're probably thinking, Corona Del Mar, well, why? Loyola has a bunch of star players, and they have Sean Kelly, who just came into Princeton. Congratulations to Sean Kelly, by the way. But for Corona Del Mar, they did not have Sterling Foley and Cade Alicano in that first matchup. Sterling Foley is a non-replaceable player. He is a 6 rotations player. You don't want to take him out. And he is just fantabulistic. He's going to USC. He's only a junior this year, so Corona Del Mar gets one more year after this year. But for the Sea Kings, I think they could overpower Loyola on the road. Now, it's going to take a whole lot of effort, and it's going to take everybody, including George Bruning, who's a senior and is going to be playing at UC Santa Barbara next year. I think it's going to take everything for Corona Del Mar to win that matchup at Loyola. That's going to be on Saturday, and it's not going to be easy because Loyola is a tough place to play at. But if Corona Del Mar does win the serve pass battle, and they get George Bruning and Sterling Foley going early, and they also get some of their other players like Reed McMullen, Caden Kavanaugh, Cade Alicano, and Ryan Gant just has a fantastic game setting the ball. I think Corona Del Mar can be in the final. Also, Brogan Glenn is a very underrated libero. He's only a sophomore, but he's stepping up, and for those that don't know, Brogan Glenn is the son of former legendary head coach Dan Glenn, who coached at Newport Harbor. But I digress. But I know for those that don't know, yes, I do have ties to both Corona Del Mar and Newport Harbor, but I just think those two teams have what it takes to make the CIF Southern Section Division I final. I know people don't want to see Battle of the Bay for like the 1000th time, but I think it's destiny that these two teams face one another. And when those two teams face one another, all bets are off. So just going to throw that out there as well. All right, so that's that for some CIF Southern Section boys volleyball in Division I. Now I got to go over to the NVA, as this weekend, in addition to the NCAA Tournament in men's volleyball, is event number 2. So it's time to go over the matchups for event 2. And also keep a sharp lookout for the top 3 matches to watch for in event number 2. So we'll start off on Friday. So kicking off event number 2, we have at 9 a.m. Pacific time. All these matchups are going to be at Pacific time, by the way. So 9 a.m., we have the Inland Empire Matadors taking on the Puerto Rico Pythons. The Pythons are 0-2, while the Matadors are 1-1. I will say this about the Matadors. They're coming off of that impressive win over the Las Vegas Ramblers. They just can't get a big head off of that. This week they have the Pythons, and they've also got the Philadelphia Founders. I give the Matadors a good shot at winning this matchup, but you gotta slow down Jair Santiago. He is a fantastic player. If you slow him down, the Matadors can pretty much run the court. But it all starts with slowing Santiago down and then going from there. But we'll see what happens with the Matadors. Then at noon Pacific time, we have the Orange County Stunners taking on the Chicago Untouchables. The battle of two 1-1 teams, as we might be able to see some more Orange County Stunners, because I don't think they were at full strength, but neither were the Untouchables. We might get to see Will Ragland, or as Adam Carnett calls him, the Incredible Mustache Man. I will say this about the Untouchables. They look good already. They look vastly improved, but now they get a bigger test in the Stunners. A.k.a. Stunana, as Nick England likes to call him. So we'll see what happens with the Stunners. They obviously fell to the New Jersey Freedom, but overall, I think we could be seeing the Stunners bouncing back, but never count out the Chicago Untouchables. Then at 3 p.m. Pacific time, we have the Philadelphia Founders taking on the Texas Tyrants. This is going to be a tough one for the Founders. I'm just going to throw this out there. The Tyrants are going to have their entire team. I'm 99% certain Gianluca Grasso is going to be back for the Tyrants this year. Or not for this year, for this event, because he was already at the airport according to his Instagram story, and this dude's about to get back, and once they get a head coach, a.k.a. Gion's dad, we're about to see the true potential of the Texas Tyrants. And then the last matchup for Friday of event number 2, we have the Las Vegas Ramblers taking on the San Diego Wild. This is going to be a barn burner of a matchup. Nick England, who is the head coach, the general manager, the owner, the everything of the San Diego Wild, faces the former team that he owned and played for, the Las Vegas Ramblers. I think it's going to be a great matchup. The Wild is 2-0. The Ramblers are 1-1 coming off that loss to the Matadors. I think the Wild have yet to show their true potential, and that's the scary thing. They could really bring out the big guns this event, but time will tell. I think for the Ramblers, it's all about reestablishing their identity. Miguel Monterola told me that he does have a few surprises and tricks coming in later on the season, and he also has he's looking to add a few more players to his roster before the deadline. More on that later. Then on Saturday at 9 a.m. Pacific time, we have the New Jersey Freedom taking on the Los Angeles Blaze. For the Blaze, they're 0-2, but they really were competitive in that first event. They got reverse swept against the Untouchables, which was a tough one, and then they lost in a competitive 4 sets to the Texas Tyrants, though they weren't at full strength either. For the Freedom, they are a whopping 2-0 this year. They beat the Puerto Rico Pythons, and they also beat the Orange County Stunners. However, this is kind of going to be a tricky weekend for them because they might not have their entire team. And I could already confirm that they will not have one key player on that team of theirs, and that player is John Cunningham. So he has another commitment going on. He never really told me exactly what the commitment was, but not having John Cunningham is crucial. So expect Samuel Schuldenberg as the libero for the New Jersey Freedom. And hopefully for their sake, they don't have a thin bench. Otherwise, going 2-0 this weekend might be a little bit more tougher than it normally appears to be. But for the Freedom, they should be able to handle the Blaze, but don't count out the Blaze. Andrew Dubé is a fantastic newcomer. Charles Belvin, as long as he's not playing middle, is a talent unmatched. And honestly, look out for Trevor Briggs as well. Like, normally he's supposed to play libero, but he's definitely more shiftable, or he can play multiple positions. So definitely do keep an eye out for all those players on the Los Angeles Blaze. Then at noon Pacific time, we have the Florida Southern Exposure taking on the Orange County Stunners. Now, I have not gotten confirmation on if the Southern Exposure is the Florida Southern Exposure or the Orlando Southern Exposure, but according to owner Tony Glesner, he says it's Florida Southern Exposure, but I digress. Anyway, so for Florida Southern Exposure and the Orange County Stunners, this is going to be a good matchup right here. I think this is the matchup of the day right here. Why? Because Southern Exposure has a good new-look team, and they pushed the Ramblers to a very grueling 4 sets in the first event. I will say this about the Southern Exposure. They just got to mind their P's and Q's, and this is a tough weekend for them. They and the Ramblers are going to have a very tough weekend as they've got some grueling competition, as the Stunners are no team to sneeze at, especially when you've got the likes of Damani Lenoir, Cody Caldwell, Matthew Hilling, Shane Beamer, and a bunch of other talented players on that team. And then the list goes on, and you have to face that really talented coach in Matt Prosser. So for the Florida Southern Exposure, it's going to be a tough weekend, but it is doable to beat the Stunners. They also have another tough matchup on Sunday, but we'll see what happens with the Southern Exposure. For the Stunners, this is their second straight match, so we'll see if they have a whole lot of rust. Well, not a whole lot. I wouldn't say rust, but I'd probably say like if they still have some gas left in the tank. But we'll see. Then at 3 p.m. Pacific time, we have the Inland Empire Matadors taking on the Philadelphia Founders. Now, I might not be in attendance for this one because I got a PA announce Newport Harbor Miracosta. If you're at that matchup, please come say hi. But for the Matadors and the Founders, again, this could be the Matadors' time to shine if, hence the word if, they play their cards right. If the Matadors play like they did against the Ramblers, I think they could really pull out this win and move to 2-0 this weekend. As long as they're not like gassed from the previous event, but they're going to have more than 24 hours rest. So I think for the Matadors, this could be their time to shine. But time will tell on if they can pull out the win over the Untouchables, just because the Untouchables, they've got a tricky weekend, as they've got the Tyrants and then they've got the Matadors. But we'll see what happens, and for their sake, hopefully they have their full roster and whatnot, but time will tell. Then on Sunday, we have the Puerto Rico Pythons taking on the Texas Tyrants. Again, it's another tricky matchup as the Tyrants take on the Pythons. For the Pythons, it's going to be so tough, and Jair Santiago may have to play Superman here. Him and Orlando Santiago. Don't know if there's a family connection there, but I digress. For the Tyrants, if they do have their entire team with Jake Langlois, as well as Gianluca Grasso, and the other guy that came from the Orange County Stunners, who I am blanking on his name, or not Orange County Stunners, the Las Vegas Ramblers. I will say this, the Tyrants could really do some damage this year, and that's going to be super fun to see that team. And I really am blanking on the guy's name that really just stood out. Ryan Mather, that's his name, Ryan Mather. And also Austin Matautia. Definitely watch out for Austin Matautia, for all you former UCLA and Hawaii fans. Like, the Flying Hawaiian really showed some chops in the first event. Like, I think Austin Matautia can also be a great fourth or third option for the Tyrants. And keep in mind, the Tyrants weren't at full strength, and if they're able to put it all together, man, that Tyrants team could finish higher than third. But we're not going to look that far down the road. We'll see, though. Then at noon Pacific time, we have the Las Vegas Ramblers taking on the New Jersey Freedom. So like I said, for the Freedom, they might not be at full strength without John Cunningham. For the Ramblers, I could see them adding another libero. Who this libero might be, you might have to find out. But I'll give you a hint. He did play for Long Beach State. No, it's not Mason Briggs. But for the Ramblers, this is a big weekend for them. They're playing two 2-0 teams going into this week. And I don't know. It's like, if they don't play their cards right, they could be 1-3 and 2 games back of the Matadors. But I will say this about the Ramblers. They are going to play a tough schedule. And once they establish these tough games, and once they get these tough games under their belt, I think they're golden the rest of the way, because the Ramblers have yet to show their ultimate true potential, but I really think that the Las Vegas Ramblers can still get back to the pinnacle of where they once were. But it's going to be a time will tell sequence for the Ramblers. And then against the Freedom team with Joe Norman and possibly Thomas Burrell being at this event, and Ian Kapp hopefully getting over his ankle injury, it's going to be very tough. But time will tell to see how good the Freedom are, or how good the Freedom will be. But we'll see what happens going forward in this matchup. I think it's going to be, this is probably the matchup of the day right here. Freedom versus Ramblers. So keep an eye on that matchup. At 3 p.m. Pacific time, we have the Florida Southern Exposure taking on the Utah Stingers. This is going to be a barn burner right here. Southern Exposure against Stingers. This is probably the most underrated matchup right here. Because the Stingers are obviously trying to reestablish themselves, trying to pick up the pieces. They have a young roster. Russell Holmes is now moving into a coaching position as well as a GM position. He's not going to be playing. As for the Southern Exposure, I will say this about them. This is a big week for them. They could probably be second in their division. They could be first in their division. Or they could be dead last in their division. This could be a heads or tails weekend for the Florida Southern Exposure. I will say this about them. Again, they have a really good roster on paper, and they really just click well one another once they get everything going. But they have to put all the pieces together, and they have to play consistently, and they can't get in their own heads. And then the last match of event number 2 is the San Diego Wild versus the Los Angeles Blaze at 6 p.m. Pacific time. So for this matchup, it's the battle of the two Southern California teams. We've got the San Diego Wild and the Los Angeles Blaze. For the Blaze, I will say this. Don't expect them to roll over that easily. Yes, they are going to be hungry for a win. And yes, they are playing 2-2-0 teams this week. But I will also say this. The Wild, they can't overlook the Blaze. I think the Blaze, with Charles Belvin and Andrew Debe, could, hence the word could, give the Wild their best shot. But the Wild just serve tough. And then they have a whole bunch of big-time hitters. And heaven knows they could, hence the word could, possibly have their entire roster. That would also include Brandon Rattray as well. Because Nick England told me that they don't have their entire roster, but he was proud of the roster that he put out on Saturday, or not on Saturday, the past weekend in event number 1. But overall, for the Wild and the Blaze, it's sure to be a surefire matchup. I can't wait to see what the Wild and Blaze have to offer. I really think that could be a little bit of an underrated matchup. I think the records don't really show it, but I think the Blaze is right there when it comes to some of these teams. And then for the Wild, they're still a new program, but I will also say this about them. They're looking really good by the day, and I don't blame anyone that wants to pick them as the favorite to win it all. But we'll see what happens. Time will tell. Alright, so that is that for all of the matchups in the NVA for this weekend in event number 2. And ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. But before I go, I will say this. I will be at the NVA this weekend. Unfortunately, I will not be at Fairfax. For those that were hoping to see me at the NCAA Men's Volleyball Tournament, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but unfortunately, I won't be there. I will guarantee you all this. I will be at the NCAA Men's Volleyball Tournament next year. I'm hoping to be at the tournament as a member of the media, not as a fan. So hopefully I will be at next year's NCAA Men's Volleyball Tournament in Long Beach, because that's the goal right there. I want to be there just because it's kind of in my own backyard. Also, for those that are interested in watching the NVA, it's going to be live streamed on their YouTube page. For those that don't want to just watch my updates, which if you do want to watch my updates, awesome. But if you don't want to watch my updates on Twitter, I totally understand. People would rather see things televised, but you know where I'll be. You can follow me on Twitter at set_point.ie. That's where I will be live tweeting all of the matches of the NVA and of the NCAA Men's Volleyball Tournament. The National Championship match of the Men's Volleyball Tournament is going to be at 2 p.m. Pacific time, so I'll probably be live tweeting that. I guess I'll also mention I might also miss the Stingers and Untouchables matchup, but I'll probably be looking back on that once I get back to the hotel, but time will tell. But with all that said and done, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point officially. It is that time for me to drop the beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you everyone for tuning in to Set Point. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen at any time, any place, anywhere, I really do appreciate you. I really do appreciate all the support that I have gotten, not just through my show, but through Twitter and through the videos as well of Alan Knight and of Mark Pavlik. I really do appreciate having the support. I'm trying to continue to grow Set Point to be as big as it can possibly be, because that's the goal. There will not be SoCal Supreme Sports Show this week, as I will be in Long Beach for the NVA. But don't count out SoCal being out of the running just yet for this week. Time will tell on if there could be a show, but don't expect an episode this week. But until then, have yourself a great rest of the week. Enjoy the volleyball action. We have a lot of volleyball happening. We've got high school volleyball. We've got NCAA Beach Volleyball happening. We've got NCAA Men's Volleyball happening. We've got the NBA happening. Just volleyball palooza right here. I will see you all on Friday at the NBA. Columbus College. Until then, peace!